Looking for magic cards? At flipsidegaming.com you can now use the promo code LVD to get a 10% discount on orders over $10, and starting from now you also get entered into the Guilds of Ravnica booster box giveaway, which runs until October 5th. Hello and welcome to another episode of Friendly Friday, a weekly series where we take a look at budget-friendly, standard or modern decks, and this week we're taking a look at 8 Whack in Modern, a mono-red Goblin aggro deck featuring a total of 8 Bushwhackers. That's where the name comes from. We've got 4 copies of Goblin Bushwhacker and 4 copies of a Reckless Bushwhacker. So let's dive right into it here, starting out with our 1-drops, where we have 4 copies of Fanatical Firebrand, 1 mana, 1/1 Goblin with haste that we can tap and sacrifice to deal 1 damage to any target. We also have 4 copies of Foundry Denizen, single red for a 1/1 Goblin, and whenever another red creature enters the battlefield under our control, Foundry Denizen gets +1/+0 until end of turn, so combines very nicely with the token theme in the deck. Then taking a look at our first Bushwhacker, Goblin Bushwhacker, single red for a 1/1 Goblin that has kicker for just a single red, and when Goblin Bushwhacker enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, then creatures we control get +1/+0 and gain haste until end of turn. And Goblin Bushwhacker combines especially nicely if we can play it in the same turn as another Goblin that usually doesn't have haste, so we can attack with it right away for a ton of damage. Then we have our 4 customary Goblin Grenades, single red for a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast Goblin Grenade we have to sacrifice a Goblin, but then we get to deal 5 damage to any target, so gives the Goblin deck a ton of reach alongside our 4 copies of Lightning Bolt, which we'll get to in just a second. And then arguably the most well-known Goblin in the deck is Goblin Guide, single red for a 2/2 Goblin with haste, and the drawback is that when Goblin Guide attacks, the opponent gets to reveal the top card of their library, and if it's a land, they can put it into their hand. Then we also have the full 4 copies of Legion Loyalist, single red for a 1/1 Goblin with haste that has Battalion, so when Legion Loyalist attacks with at least 2 other creatures, then creatures we control gain first strike and trample until end of turn, and our creatures can be blocked by creature tokens this turn, which is very useful against Lingering Souls for example. Then we have the full 4 copies of Lightning Bolt as removal that can also go to the face to finish off an opponent. Then we get to our 2-drops, where we have a new addition from M19, Goblin Instigator, just a single copy, a 2 mana 1/1 Goblin, that when it enters the battlefield we get to make a 1/1 a red Goblin creature token, so works very nicely with a number of cards. It triggers Foundry Denizen twice, having multiple tokens in play plays well with our Bushwhacker effects, and also gives us a lot of fodder to sacrifice to a Goblin Grenade for example, and helps us enable Battalion for Legion Loyalist all by itself, so just making a lot of Goblin tokens in this deck is a good thing. Then we also have 3 copies of Goblin Piledriver, 2 mana for a 1/2 Goblin with protection from blue, and when Goblin Piledriver attacks it gets +2/+0 until end of turn for each other attacking Goblin, so pays us off for going wide, and that's where the tokens come in as well. And speaking of tokens, we've got 4 copies of Mogg War Marshal, 2 mana for a 1/1 Goblin with Echo for 1 and a red, so at the beginning of our next upkeep we have to pay the Echo cost, otherwise we have to sacrifice a War Marshal, and when the War Marshal enters the battlefield or dies, we get to make a 1/1 a red Goblin creature token, so helps us trigger Foundry Denizen up to 3 times, and gives us a nice target for Goblin Grenade. Then we have 4 copies of a Reckless Bushwhacker, 3 mana for a 2/1 Goblin with haste, but it has Surge for 1 and a red. So if we've cast another spell during our turn, we can play the Bushwhacker for its Surge cost, and if we did pay the Surge cost, then other creatures we control get +1/+0 and haste until end of turn when the Bushwhacker enters the battlefield, so a nice payoff card for playing multiple spells in the same turn, very similar to Goblin Bushwhacker. And then last but not least, we have 2 copies of Goblin Chieftain, 3 mana for a 2/2 Goblin with haste, and other Goblin creatures we control get +1/+1 and have haste, so nice Goblin Lord for the deck. And then our mana base is very simple, just 18 basic mountains. Then going over the sideboard, we have some graveyard hate in the form of Tormod, Crypt and Relic of Progenitus. We've got 2 copies of Searing Blood against small creature decks, 3 Dragon's Claws against the burn decks, full 4 copies of Smash to Smithereens against artifact-based decks, and 2 Goblin Chainwhirlers against token decks, or decks with a lot of 1 toughness creatures. So that's the deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, we're on the play. And how about this hand? Definitely need a second land here, since we're not really doing much otherwise. But it is a relatively powerful hand if we do find a second land, so I think we risk it, since we don't really want to be playing Goblin Bushwhackers as 1 mana 1/1s if we can help it. Alright, let's lead with our Goblin Guide. And it revealed a Wizard's Lightning. Alright, so we're up against some sort of wizard deck. Opponent leads with Wooded Foothills. Alright, let's get in with our Goblin Guide. There's a good chance our opponent's got a Lightning Bolt at the ready that they want to use after the Goblin Guide trigger. Reveals Delver of Secrets. Alright, opponent takes 2, and we'll play the Foundry Street Denizen. So your opponent on a blue-red Delver kind of wizard deck. But they're gonna shuffle away the Delver to get a tapped Steam Vents. And there's another Delver. And this is a wizard, so they can cast a Wizard's Lightning if they want to. Alright, so we did find the second mountain. So now we have a few options. We can kick a Bushwhacker, we can just play a Piledriver. I don't mind playing the Piledriver here, since that's a pretty nice one to get in play, can't even be blocked by the Delver. It'll trigger the Foundry Street, and then our opponent has to decide whether they want to kill the Goblin Guide or the Foundry Street, and take less damage this turn, or if they're willing to kill the Piledriver at the cost of taking 2 damage. And playing the Piledriver before playing the Bushwhacker also makes sense. Opponent does have the option of blocking our Foundry Street Denizen with the Delver, as they reveal a Spell Snare. And they're going to use a Lightning on the Foundry Street, and then take 2 from the Guide. And the Delver is going to transform, revealing the Spell Snare. But knowing about the Spell Snare, we can kind of play around it. So now I don't mind playing a kicked Bushwhacker. That works. Attack with everyone, and we might see a removal spell on the Piledriver here. Opponent reveals Opt on the top of their deck, and our opponent's going to fetch away the Opt to get an island. And it's going to be 3 mana for a Wizard's Lightning on the Piledriver, so they're only going to take 5. And of course, now that the Delver transformed, the Wizard's Lightning costs a full 3 mana, so that's kind of a nombo. But we did get our opponent to 7, so if this Grenade resolves, then we just need 2 more points, which seems pretty realistic here. Opponent's got 3 cards in hand, including a Spell Snare, so we won't be playing a Piledriver into untapped blue mana. Mogg War Marshal is interesting, but we do still know about the Spell Snare. So I think I'm in favor of just playing another kick Bushwhacker here. There's a chance we could kill our opponent if we can just play Firebrand attack and then Goblin Grenade for 5. But I think Bushwhacker kicked is safer in case they have a counterspell for the grenade, or they manage to kill some of our creatures. And this is technically attacking for lethal as well, so if they don't have anything, they're just dead. Opponent reveals Snapcaster Mage, that's a good one. Can flash back a Wizard's Lightning. It's going to be Burst Lightning on the Goblin Guide. Opponent takes 4 down to 3. So they've got 3 cards in hand, a Spell Snare, a Snapcaster Mage, and 1 unknown card. And Lightning Bolt should make this pretty trivial, so we can bolt the opponent. And if this doesn't work, we can Goblin Grenade. Alright, so on to sideboarding against blue-red wizards. How do we want to approach this? So Dragon's Claw is definitely interesting, since it can gain us a ton of life, as we're both heavy red decks. Searing Blood seems like a good addition, and then I'm unsure about the Chainwhirler. Opponent does have a decent number of 1 toughness creatures, but it is pretty slow. And which cards would we be taking out? I could see cutting the Loyalists, since our opponent's gonna have a ton of removal that they're gonna be pointing at our goblins, so getting to Battalion might be tricky. So maybe we shave the Loyalist, and then 3 more cuts. I could see cutting either the Foundry Street Denizen or the Chieftain, just Chieftain because it's an easy target for a Lightning Bolt or Wizard's Lightning. And maybe the Denizen also because it doesn't have haste and is also an easy target for their removal spells. While most of our other goblins do something when they come into play, or make multiple tokens, or have haste. So this seems okay. And even though our opponent's a Snapcaster deck and they probably have Grim Lavamancer, I don't think we want to be bringing in any relics for Graveyard Hate. Alright, so we're on the draw. Don't think we can afford to keep a 5-lander in this deck. 3 lands is pretty much where we want to stop drawing lands. So we'll go to 6. Alright, this hand's not great, but I'll keep bottom the mountain. So we'll see how good this Chainwhirler ends up being. Alright, drawing more mountains is not where we want to be. There's a Mutavault as well. And even more mountains. For an 18 land deck, we're definitely flooding out. Even bottomed a land with our Scry. And we're going to activate Mutavault. And as soon as it taps, I think we're fine bolting it. Even though we could save the bolt to go alongside Bushwhacker for Surge. I think we're fine trading bolt for the Mutavault here. Alright. So now we could go Bushwhacker into a Reckless Bushwhacker with Surge. That's probably okay. Even though it's unexciting. And then we're hoping that our opponent plays a 1-toughness creature that dies to Chainwhirler. I like this Delver of Secrets. Alright, let's run out the Chainwhirler here. That works. And we get to get in for 1. Opponent's got another Burst Lightning on the Bushwhacker, just a 1/1 though. So they're using the removal pretty aggressively. Maybe they have a Snapcaster Mage in hand. Just a Spire Bluff Canal for now. Alright, let's run out the Dragon's Claw. See if they maybe have a Spell Snare. They don't. Let's get in for 3. Alright, that works. And then we'll run out the Mogg War Marshal. And then we're probably going to pay the Echo cost, since we have a ton of mana anyways. And there's a Nimble Obstructionist cycled to counter the ability, fair enough. So we don't get the Goblin token from the Marshal. There's an Opt. Opponent also with quite a few lands here, so we're not the only ones with a few too many lands. Let's pay the Echo costs. And draw another Dragon's Claw. Alright, I guess we're playing it. So we're not getting burnt out anytime soon. The major problem is if our opponent just kills all our creatures, then we don't have any pressure, and then they can kind of take over. Alright, opponent decided to wait on the bolt until after we got the Dragon's Claw into play. They probably should have casted in response. So yeah, what we don't want to see from the opponent is a creature that can start pressuring us. Snapcaster Mage, for example, is pretty bad for us. Gets to flash back a Burst Lightning. At least we get a Goblin token from the Marshal. And we gain 2 life from our claws. And our opponent does only have 1 card in hand, so I guess we're not that far behind. But I'm guessing our opponent's top decks are probably slightly better than ours at this point. Snapcaster gets in for 2. And Denizen's not a bad draw. Let's get in for 1. And another Snapcaster Mage, yep. This is kind of what we didn't want to see. They're going for Opt. And they've got a Magma Spray for the Marshal, even exiles it so we don't get the Goblin token. There's also the argument for keeping Foundry Street in hand in case we top deck a Bushwhacker. Then we're gonna want the extra Goblin to go alongside it. But I think I'm fine playing it here. Can either trade for a Snapcaster or get in for a few points. Both Snapcasters get in there. Think I'm okay blocking. Alright, Searing Blood is a nice draw. I think we'll do that on the opponent's upkeep on the Snapcaster. And I guess we'll play the land in case they have mana leaks left in their deck. Nimble Obstructionist is a better target for Searing Blood. I think we still do it on upkeep. since all their counterspells are 2 or less mana. So Obstruction is down and our opponent takes 3 damage. So that was a good exchange. We're now at 25 life, so we've got a bit of a buffer. But our opponent does have the only creature in play. So we need to draw some burn spells to finish them off. A Piledriver would be pretty decent here too. Instead it's a Denizen. And Delver of Secrets can definitely hit pretty hard. Delver does not flip, so that's a good sign. Opponent either drew a land or a creature. Wizard's Lightning goes after the Denizen. Gain 2 life. So we know the card in our opponent's hand is either a creature or a land. Just a mountain to draw. And now Delver flips, revealing another Lightning. And now we're taking 5 a turn, so it's not going to take long for the opponent to kill us. And there's a Goblin Grenade, alright, so opponents add a virtual 2 life if we can resolve this with a Goblin. But of course that does require a Goblin in play. Alright, Lightning Bolts. So I think this is probably going to go after the opponent's life total. And then we just need to find a Goblin to finish them off. I think that's the most realistic plan. I don't think we're getting through with our creatures. Opponent has too many removal spells in hand at this point. Alright, so we probably should just bolt our opponents. Gain some life with the Dragon's Claws. And there's a Goblin. Could get spell snared. Does not get spell snared. I think we're just going for it here. And do they have a counterspell? And they don't. Awesome, managed to beat Blue-Red Wizards. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the play. And how about this one? Do need a second land at some point, but I think this is keepable. An interesting question whether to lead with the Foundry Suite or the Goblin Guide. I think we lead with the Foundry Suite. Since if we find a land, then we can pump it twice next turn. And we just get more value out of it a long term. Untapped Sacred Foundry, could be a burn deck. As we see Goblin Guide, alright. So it's just going to be a race, and they did give us a mountain, which is nice. And our mana base doesn't cost us any life, which is our advantage. Alright, so another interesting choice. I'm kind of leaning towards playing the other Denizen. I don't think Piledriver is going to survive against the burn deck. So we want to be mana efficient and not play 2 mana threat that's gonna die to a Lightning Helix or some other burn spell. My guess is Denizen to guide is probably fine. And attack them for 5. And then these Bushwhackers are getting pretty appealing. Revealed a mountain, so opponent also got their value from our guide. It's only fair. Well, if we can find a third land here, we get to play a Loyalist and kick a Bushwhacker, which is gonna add up to quite a bit of damage. Opponent decides to go with the Wooded Foothills instead of the basic mountain. So they wanna thin out their deck maybe, still seems a little strange. And it's gonna be a Searing Blaze taking out our Denizen, sure. And Goblin Guide stays home, so our opponent takes on the control role in the matchup, which seems reasonable. Alright, so we have a few options this turn. We want to keep the grenade until kind of our last card. So we can either go Piledriver or we can go kick Bushwhacker. I'm kind of liking kick Bushwhacker since we have a second one. And then our opponent's probably going to trade their Goblin Guide for our Goblin Guide, but we still get in for 4. So the opponent's best cards in the matchup are probably Lightning Helix, as we just revealed it with the guide, and Searing Blaze, which they played last turn. So they're definitely finding their important cards in the matchup here. Opponent does go for the trade, takes 5 down to 7. But we know they have a Lightning Helix in hand, so they're at a virtual 10 life. So the Goblin Grenade still pretty far away from killing them. Opponent says go. Goblin Chieftain is also an interesting draw. So I'm guessing we just play another kick Bushwhacker. The opponent's gonna Helix a Denizen at the very least. And then we might get in for 1 damage. Put the opponent to 6. That seems reasonable. Puts us pretty close to killing them with the grenade. Although at this point they probably also have a lightning bolt in hand that they want to use. Or they just have a handful of 2 mana burn spells. Hopefully not multiple copies of Lightning Helix. So there's a first copy. Takes out the Denizen. Do they have a bolt as well? They do. Alright, so we only get in for 2 here. So we're still pretty far away from casting the grenade here. Opponent Lava spikes us down to 12. We wouldn't mind drawing an extra land here. And we did. So now we can go Piledriver plus Loyalist, which seems better than playing a Chieftain into 2 open mana. So let's play the Loyalist. And attack for 2. Alright, opponent takes it. So they might be planning to burn our face end of turn here. Play a Piledriver. Mostly hoping to dodge Lightning Helix. And hoping they can just cast 4 burn spells in a row and kill us. It's gonna be a Skullcrack, putting us to 9. So there's definitely a non-zero chance that we die here. But not super likely. And next turn we're definitely threatening to deal quite a bit of damage on the way back. Alright, we get to do it all here. Chieftain into Goblin Grenade, and hopefully that's good enough. We also get to trigger Battalion for whatever that's worth. So does our opponent have another Lightning Helix? Looks like they do, taking out the Piledriver. So they're technically still alive, but Goblin Grenade's probably gonna finish them off. Alright, unless they have a bolt for the Chieftain as well, so they only take 2, and they're still at 7. But they did have to use all their burn spells on our creatures, but that was definitely the worst case scenario, Helix plus a Lightning Bolt, since any other combination would not have done it. Alright, I guess we're saying go, since we don't want to fire off the grenade quite yet. But now hopefully they're out of burn spells that actually deal with our creatures, and we can get those last 2 points in next turn, and then finish them off with a grenade. So let's get in. Opponent takes it. Play the Denizen. And then we probably just sacrifice the Bushwhacker here with the grenade. And see if they have another Helix. Wow, if they do, triple Lightning Helix. Well, they definitely drew the right cards for the matchup, that's for sure. So your opponent's still alive at 3. And they put us to 6 with that Helix. Just hoping they draw a land here. And that we draw a Goblin. Alright, there's a Wooded Foothills. I guess they could also have a Searing Blaze here, which now has Landfall enabled. Alright, get to untap. Reckless Bushwhacker, good draw. Just played for 3 mana. And our opponent finally scoops it up. Alright, so managed to be triple Lightning Helix against Burn. But our opponent definitely didn't draw many creatures that game, which also made a difference. Alright, so after Sideboard we get to bring in 3 Dragon's Claws. The bad news is our opponent gets to bring in Core Firewalker potentially, which is quite a headache, since we don't have a clean answer to it. And we get to bring in Searing Blood. Could also consider Chainwhirler, but it does die to all their 3 damage burn spells, so I don't know how good that is. And what do we take out? I'm leaning towards taking out a Piledriver, since they just die to all their burn spells anyway. While the other goblins at least have an effect when they come into play, or leave behind an extra body. And then what else do we take out? Could consider cutting some Legion Loyalists. Pretty low impact card, and the effect is not too relevant in the matchup. Yeah, I think I'll cut 2 Loyalists here and try this setup. Mostly hoping to dodge Core Firewalker, since I don't think we're beating that card. Alright, this hand seems okay. Turn 1 Grim Lavamancer from the opponent. We'll have to kill it eventually, but we can do that with the Firebrand as well. But I think we can afford to wait a turn at least. So instead we'll just play the Denizen now. And then next turn we could go Denizen into Firebrand, or Firebrand into Goblin Guide. And again, we're prioritizing playing the Denizens as soon as possible to extract the most triggers out of him. There's a fetch land, which does change the Grim Lavamancer math, since they could bolt us and then use a Lavamancer on the Denizen. So we're going to want to be careful here. I think we just lead with the Firebrand and then try to kill the Lavamancer as soon as possible. And hope they don't have Lightning Bolt. Alright, that worked. So now what? Probably just playing another Denizen and waiting on the guide. But I'm expecting this Denizen to die. Opponent's gonna fetch. Is it gonna be a Helix or a Searing Blaze? It's gonna be a Searing Blaze. Alright, so that kills our Denizen, puts us to 17. And a Goblin Guide from the opponents, which is gonna get in there and reveal a Goblin Grenade. We'll take 2. And a Rift Bolt suspended. Alright, so my guess is we want to deal with the Goblin Guide here with our Lightning Bolt, since otherwise that's going to end up dealing too much damage to us. And then we probably just get in there with our own guide. So let's play Goblin Guide, attack for 4, and then probably end up bolting their guide when it attacks us. Opponent got an Arid Mesa out of the deal. Takes 4 down to 15, we'll say go. And we'll see where the Rift Bolt goes. Goes after the Goblin Guide. Makes sense. Alright, so our opponent's got 4 cards in hand. We know one of them is an Arid Mesa and another Goblin Guide. I guess we can bolt here. Alright, let's hope to draw some lands of these. Got 1 mountain and 2 mountains. Alright, so we got max value out of their guides. So next turn we could go Firebrand into kick Bushwhacker. And there's the Arid Mesa. Opponent's fetching. Hopefully not for a Core Firewalker. Alright, just a basic mountain. And what did they need their mana for? It's gonna be Ensnaring Bridge, wow. Okay. Well, that's their sideboard tech. Fair enough. So I guess our plan of attacking with our Reckless Bushwhacker is not gonna work out now, since our opponent only has 1 card in hand. So I guess we're just attacking with the Denizen, can't even play creature pre-combat. Yeah, some burn decks definitely have a few Ensnaring Bridges in their sideboard, but it's pretty difficult for us to bring in our Smash to Smithereens in the dark without knowing for sure they have the bridge. So we'll attack for 1, and we can play a Bushwhacker on defense in case they attack us with the guide, or we can play the Firebrand, which can also sacrifice and deal 1 damage. I guess we kind of want to get the Firebrand in play in case they're stuck with 1 card in hand, so the Firebrand can still attack into the opponent, but I guess I'll keep the guide on defense in that case. So this is just pretty awkward for us. Guess we'll play the Bushwhacker and say go. Alright, so we've got 6 points of burn in hand. We'll need to draw at least 7 more points. But our opponent's in the same boat, but of course being the burn deck they have more burn spells than creatures. So we're definitely trading here. And Lightning Bolt revealed, alright, that's a good start. Opponent's gonna Skullcrack us down to 10. And Eidolon of the Great Revel as their last card. Alright, so that's gonna make things a little awkward. But the Eidolon could also play in our favor, since it's going to force the opponent to play out our cards and trigger their own Eidolon. My guess is we just want to play Bushwhacker and keep it on defense. Although I guess we're kind of forced to trade with the opponent's Eidolon, since otherwise they can just attack us with it. And then play out their stuff after attacking with it, potentially. Alright, we'll see how this plays out. We've got a virtual 9 points of burn in hand. But that's gonna cost us 6 life, and there's a Lava Spike, putting the opponent to 11. And us to 5, so we can only cast 2 more spells here, as long as the Eidolon's in play. But we might get to a point where we can get our opponent low enough where they can't cast any spells with Eidolon in play either. So let's say we cast Goblin Grenade right now, sacrificing the Denizen, put our opponent to 6, we go to 3. Then we can cast Lightning Bolt, putting opponent to 3, us to 1. But then if our opponent draws a burn spell, we're dead. And they don't die to their own Eidolon trigger. So we're 1 point short here. And of course we can't cast a Firebrand with the Eidolon in play. But we're probably forced to cast a Grenade here anyway. And killing the Eidolon also doesn't really accomplish much. So I think we're Goblin Grenading the opponent, sacrificing the Denizen. And then we're hoping our opponent draws lands and creatures for the rest of the game. Alright, there's a Wooded Foothills. So we're just forced to say go here. And this is kind of a stalemate until the opponent finds a burn spell, I guess. But if they find a creature and they're forced to play it out, then things could get interesting. And instead they found a Rift Bolt, which they hard cast. So opponent's Eidolon trigger is going to put them to 4. We can bolt them down to 1 before the Rift Bolt resolves. And we'll be at 1 from their Eidolon trigger, and then we'll die. So super close game here. That Ensnaring Bridge definitely caught us off guard, since we did have a lot of potential damage in hand with our creatures. But do we want to bring in Smash just for the off chance that they keep in Ensnaring Bridge? Seems pretty bad, since they don't have any other targets. I don't think we bring in Smash to Smithereens and just try and be faster, and maybe get a Dragon's Claw down, and then draw enough burn spells to close out the game. I would like to be on the play. Can't keep a no-lander. Alright, this is a bit better, I guess. Looking for something to go alongside the Bushwhacker. Just more early plays in general. Dragon's Claw, I'm not gonna say no to. This is definitely going to be an uphill battle, being down 2 cards. Opponent reveals Grim Lavamancer, which is also very good against us. And we don't really want to use Goblin Grenade to kill it. Opponent shocks for a Sacred Foundry. And is going to bolt or guide instead of playing the Lavamancer. Alright, let's play the Dragon's Claw. But the problem here is that we have 0 pressure in the form of creatures. And our opponent's going to have a Lavamancer active in a few turns, which is going to deal with pretty much all our creatures. And it's going to be very tricky to deal all 15 points of damage with burn spells. And let's see what our opponent fetches. Just a mountain, so we're still safe from Core Firewalker at least. It's going to be a Goblin Guide instead. Revealing another Reckless Bushwhacker. And Grim Lavamancer. Alright. Let's just play 3 mana Bushwhacker. So the Dragon's Claw is doing a good job of buffering our life total, but it might not be enough here. We'll see what they do. Goblin Guide gets in, reveals Chieftain, and lets us untap. I don't think we want to play the Chieftain quite yet, since they still have Grim Lavamancer up as well. So instead we probably just want to cast another Bushwhacker. I think we're probably keeping the Grenade to go face, but it's pretty ambitious if the opponent has a few copies of Lightning Helix. Opponent's going to use a Lavamancer, and do they have another 1 mana play? They don't, so they fall to 10. Alright. And Guide gets in for 2, reveals Goblin Instigator. And lets us untap. Alright, so we're probably just attacking with the Bushwhacker and then playing the Instigator. And there's a Lightning Helix. Let's play Instigator. And say go. Could definitely consider firing off this grenade at Lavamancer at this point, since that's card going to be an issue in the long term. Yeah, that might actually be worth it here, even though it's not pretty. Would have loved to draw another answer to the Lavamancer in the meantime. So our opponent's up 6 cards to our 1, but we're ahead on life thanks to our Dragon's Claw. But if our opponent finds a few more creatures to add to the board, we're gonna fall behind in life pretty quickly. And the Chieftain's quite awkward, since if they kill it, then the Instigator gets eaten alive by the Goblin Guide. So I guess we're just playing the Chieftain and only attacking with it. Opponent takes a trade. A Lava Spike deals 2 damage. And Rift Bolt suspended. Alright, that's not too bad. And Firebrand would have been a nice answer to that Grim Lavamancer, but I'll take it. So we get to get in for 2. And Rift Bolt is gonna go face. I would think that they're better off killing our creatures at this point, but who knows? Maybe they have a creature they can block with. Alright, opponent lets us on tap. We'll get in for 2. Opponent down to 9. And Boros Charm to the face. Well, if our opponent keeps drawing these burn spells that only go face, then our 2 goblins might go the distance. Opponent says go, and another Dragon's Claw. I think we attack first, since that makes it more likely that our goblins connect. If we play Dragon's Claw, then our opponent would probably respond with a burn spell anyway to kill our goblin. It's going to be a Searing Blaze. So they only take 1. But a second Dragon's Claw is definitely very strong here. And our opponent's just going to concede to the second Dragon's Claw. Alright, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the play. And this hand seems okay. Let's lead with a Goblin Guide. Reveals Burning Tree Emissary. Alright, so this could be some sort of mirror match against another Bushwhacker deck. They have a turn 1 Oath of Nissa. Interesting. It reveals Thragtusk. Well, Thragtusk is definitely an issue for our deck, so we have to try and be faster. Alright, so how about Goblin Piledriver? The Burning Tree Emissary can just block it. But we could be swinging with a Legion Loyalist, giving First Strike and Trample, so I guess that's fine. So we'll just attack for 2. Reveals a Forest. And then play Piledriver. And then next turn with the Legion Loyalist, hope to deal some damage. Especially if we draw land, we could go Loyalist into a kicked Bushwhacker, which can deal a ton of damage. So there's a Forest we knew about, and the Burning Tree Emissary, so I'm guessing this is not a Bushwhacker deck, but instead they're playing Burning Tree Emissary for the Green Devotion. So this is some sort of Green Devotion ramp deck. And they have double Burning Tree into Oath of Nissa, and Scavenging Ooze revealed. So the bad news keeps coming here. Ooze and Thragtusk, both in the opponent's hand. And we did not find the land, sadly. So instead, we could go with a Legion Loyalist, attack with all 3, and then keep Firebrand back. And if our opponent tries to block the Loyalist with First Strike, we can finish off the blocker with the Firebrand. The other option is just playing a Loyalist and Firebrand, attack with everyone, but then they get to eat the Loyalist and the Firebrand, so that seems bad. Or we could make some tokens and wait on the Alpha Strike, but I think we're fine playing the Loyalist here. Play Firebrand, attack with everyone except for Firebrand. And then our Piledriver is going to be pretty big, and our opponent's going to have a hard time blocking. And Nykthos revealed, so our opponent's getting lucky on our Goblin Guide flips, and Nykthos is the reason they're playing all these Burning Tree Emissaries. So our opponent's going to make the obvious block. We're going to shoot down a Burning Tree and then kill it with First Strike. And then next turn we can play a kicked Bushwhacker, which is going to make it so we can attack with our Loyalist into a 2/2, although we know they're going to play a Scavenging Ooze and be able to eat up a creature. So Scavenging Ooze is going to be an issue. Yep, there it is. And it's going to eat up something right away. So we're kind of hoping to draw land so we can Goblin Grenade the Ooze and then Still play a kicked Bushwhacker instead of Bolt. I guess Bolt is fine too. So now we can Bolt Ooze, attack with everyone, and I think our opponent's dead no matter how they block, since they're taking at least 6 damage, and then the Goblin Grenade can finish them off. And then Goblin Grenade for the win. Alright, so we managed to sneak under our opponent, which had a pretty good start. They had double Burning Tree on turn 2, Scavenging Ooze, gain a life on turn 3, and they had a Thragtusk in hand, but our Goblin deck curved out quite nicely. We could consider bringing in Chainwhirler since it answers Arbor Elf, but it's pretty slow at doing so. But I think Searing Blood's going to be serviceable, so I'll cut an Instigator and one other random creature, maybe a War Marshal, and try this. Alright, this hand seems acceptable. Legion Loyalist is definitely a nice combo with Goblin Piledriver. Being able to give it trample makes it a lot more effective. And there's a turn 1 Arbor Elf, which I don't think we can keep in play, so we're gonna kill it with a Firebrand, which is a pretty ideal answer on turn 1. There's Utopia Sprawl, so our opponent could have been able to make 4 mana here with the Arbor Elf. Instead it's just 2 mana for a Burning Tree, and that's it. So they have 2 cards left in hand. We could play Piledriver, and the next turn bolt the Burning Tree, as well as play a kicked Bushwhacker. That seems pretty tempting. But either way, playing the Piledriver here seems fine, since I think we're likely to end up using the bolt on the Burning Tree to preserve our creatures, as opposed to running the Goblin Guide into it. Alright, there's Nykthos, still mana neutral at this point since they only have 3 green devotion. And there's Garruk Wildspeaker, which can also untap Nykthos, so they can generate quite a bit of mana, and their opponent is indeed untapping Nykthos, which now does produce extra mana. So they've got 1 card left in hand. Is it a Thragtusk? I hope not. Instead it's Summoner's Pact for Thragtusk. Well, fair enough. So yeah, now we're definitely in trouble here. Opponent with turn 3 Planeswalker and 5-drop in play, despite us killing the Arbor Elf. Our opponent is going to be forced to pay for their pact, but they can do so pretty easily. I guess if we had a Molten Rain for the Nykthos, they would die, but we don't have access to that card. So, what do we want to do? I guess we could kill Garruk by using Firebrand and Lightning Bolt on it. That might be necessary here. Try and limit the damage Garruk does, and hope they don't top deck anything for a while. And then build up our board of goblins and try and go wide, maybe find a Legion Loyalist to help us give our creatures first strike. And I guess we'll play a Goblin Guide and keep it back. So our opponent's forced to pay for the pact this turn. They could still potentially play a 1-drop if they draw it here. Just a forest instead. And let's see how aggressive Thragtusk gets. It does get in there. Well, we're just 1 Legion Loyalist away from dealing quite a bit of damage on the way back. Instead it's a Reckless Bushwhacker. If we attack with everyone, our opponent trades Burning Tree for Piledriver, and we get in for 4 if we play the Reckless Bushwhacker here. That might be okay. And Utopia Sprawl revealed. Alright, so at least our opponent's not drawing any action. So your opponent makes the obvious block. Falls to 21 still. But there's a chance we outrace Thragtusk if our opponent gets too aggressive here. So they might have to stay back at some point. They're gonna be attacking for now. And Bushwhacker's not a bad draw, so we could go Bushwhacker into Reckless Bushwhacker with Surge. And we would be attacking for 8, 9, 10. Putting them to 11. But then we kind of use all our Bushwhackers. The other option is playing Mogg War Marshal, but then our opponent's definitely not going to be attacking with Thragtusk since we could just chum block with a War Marshal. I don't think we want to use both Bushwhackers this turn, so instead I'm just going to cast Goblin Bushwhacker with Kicker and get in for 8 points. And then next turn we can keep back the Mogg War Marshal to block the Thragtusk. Opponent is going to draw an Arbor Elf. So ideally we draw land so we can go War Marshal into kicked Bushwhacker. but there's other good draws we could have too. And alright, now our opponent is going to keep back the Thragtusk. And Goblin Piledriver is an interesting draw. So let's play the Piledriver. Say go. And then we're hoping to draw Legion Loyalist more than anything. Opponent's tapping a lot of mana, that's bad news. Untapping their land with Arbor Elf and Craterhoof Behemoth. Well, I guess that's just gonna kill us now. So they've got 16 power of trample, and we have 6 toughness. So they kill us exactly here. Oh well, that was a pretty good top deck. Alright, so let's see if we can do better in game 3. Think our sideboard plan makes sense. Didn't think we change anything. Just have to hope to be faster and dodge an early Thragtusk. Would like to be on the plate. And this hand seems okay. Think we're leading with a Foundry Street Denizen here. And I'm okay if they block it with an Arbor Elf. And then next turn we can go Foundry Street into Goblin Guide. It's gonna be a Utopia Sprawl instead. Alright, Fanatical Firebrand's interesting. So let's attack for 5. And a Thragtusk revealed. Alright, so our friends are gonna be joining us in a second. And a Kitchen Sphinx as well. Well, our opponent definitely came prepared for the burn matchup. Goblin Chieftain's not bad. So I think we're just attacking with everyone here. Deal 9. Opponent's gonna block the Chieftain. They're gonna go to 8 and then back up to 10 with a 2-1 Kitchen Sphinx, which we can kill with our Firebrand next turn. I think that's okay. And Nykthos revealed, our Goblin Guides being so generous today. Nykthos at the moment doesn't generate any additional mana, but if they have a green 1-drop, then it does. And it's gonna be a Summoner's Pact, and Burning Tree Emissary is gonna accomplish that job, so our opponent gets to play Thragtusk this turn. Go back up to 15 and kind of mess with our plan. And Lightning Bolt to draw. So we've got 9 points of burn in hand, which would have been enough if they hadn't played Thragtusk this turn. So we can Firebrand, kill Kitchen Sphinx, attack with everyone. Opponent blocks with 2 creatures. Takes 2. Down to 13. And we're holding Lightning Bolt and Grenade with a single Guide or Denizen play. That doesn't seem great. But what's the alternative? I guess we could bolt the Burning Tree. Or we could wait until we find a Bushwhacker of some sort. But I think we want to get rid of as many creatures as possible here so that their Nykthos doesn't make a million mana. Could also consider using both removal spells on the Thragtusk to deal with the tokens so they don't get to eat our goblins. Maybe that's better, but we also have to sacrifice a goblin in order to do that. I think keeping the burn spells in hand is going to be more beneficial, and I think killing the Kitchen Sphinx is fine. Alright, let's get in there. Another Summoner's Pact revealed. Opponent does go for the blocks we expected. Takes 2 down to 13. And we're just gonna say go here. And that other Summoner's Pact, of course, can find them another Thragtusk. So we're in quite a bit of trouble here, to put it lightly. Thragtusk stays back. So do we bolt their face here? Do we bolt the Thragtusk? I think we're bolting face. And another bolt, alright, we're getting close. But the second Thragtusk is going to be a bit too much to handle. I guess that's assuming they do have a second Thragtusk in their deck, which is not a given. And there's a Summoner's Pact, which is going to get Scavenging Ooze instead. Interesting. And there's Ooze with a second Nykthos as well. And the problem here is if we bolt the Ooze, they can just activate it twice in response. So the Ooze just large enough to survive the bolt here. And our opponent feels confident enough to attack with the Thragtusk. Yep, so this game's pretty much over. We can kill the Ooze with our Goblin Grenade, but that leaves us with not much in hand. I guess we can Goblin Grenade the ooze here, sacking Goblin Guide, and then Surge a Bushwhacker. Get them to 11, but that's still a pretty long road. Opponent has to pay for their pact. Gets in with Thragtusk and Fanatical Firebrand to draw. Can play that. This could chump Thragtusk and deal 1 to something, or we can take out Arbor Elf and get in for 2. Think we're probably more likely to want to play defense here. I think I'm okay attacking with the Bushwhacker, and if they want to trade it for Arbor Elf, so be it. They do. But we can absorb 1 hit from Thragtusk with our Firebrand now. Elvish Visionary, draws him a card. I guess we'll kill the Visionary instead of dealing 1 to the opponent. Another Burning Tree. And Nykthos taps for 5 mana into another Visionary. Alright, this is getting a bit out of hand now. And a Steel Leaf Champion. Alright. Well, I guess we can take out the Steel Leaf Champion here after chumping Thragtusk, but that still leaves us pretty far behind on board. So I don't think we're drawing our way out of this. Opponent with just enough life gain in the early game to stay alive. If they didn't cast a turn 3 Thragtusk, we might have been able to actually burn them out. And our opponent tapping an awful lot of mana for a kicked Wolfbriar Elemental. With multi-kicker making 5 wolf tokens. Yep, that's probably going to be game. And our last draw is a mountain. Alright, that's going to do it. So now thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this gameplay. And as always, have a nice day. I also want to thank all my patrons for supporting the channel, and you can do so yourself as well over at patreon.com/LegenVD, where you get cool rewards for supporting the channel, as well as getting us closer to our goals, where with every goal reached, we will release an additional weekly series. So if you want to see more content, Patreon is the place to go.